Nice. So here we go. Got all the noodles tucked in there. So I'm cutting them to length. Unfortunately, this bilge here, or this compartment, I guess I should call it, is the biggest pain in the butt one, because I actually have to cut these noodles to squeeze them in there, and then you're fighting with kind of the taper on the hull of the boat. So I'm trying not to, I can squeeze more in there if I really wanted. I don't really want to. I don't feel like it. I don't want to cut any that are smaller than that. I kind of got it set up here to where those little pieces will kind of preload the floorboards when we put them down, and it'll kind of cinch everything in there and tighten it up. And then I also tried to cut lengthwise, cut all the pieces in a way to where they wedge themselves in between, these two bulkheads, I guess you could call them here. So anyway, this one's pretty much done. I think I'm going to grab that floorboard and flop it back down in here and keep working my way back. I've been digging foam out from underneath these bulkhead sections here. I don't know if I'm going to get it all or not. I'm really getting anxious to take this thing out and try it. So I'm going to chisel away a little more at that and get it as best as I can. But that's kind of a deep, that's a pretty far distance to go, because it actually goes back underneath all the way to that far seam right there. So anyway, yeah, I'll flap that floorboard and we're gonna keep forging ahead here. Fighting with the rain a little bit today, so it's been running me back inside, but the weatherman says that it's gonna clear out, so hopefully by this afternoon we'll have some sun, and we'll get a good first run at this boat on the water after having shed a whole bunch of weight. So alright guys, here's what it looks like. Nice and colorful. I just kind of picked the noodles how I had them and put the ones in there that made the most sense. A couple spots I got them a little proud to where the floorboards will kind of snug them on in. Should do a good job of taking the vibrations out. I got these forward compartments already buttoned up. I'll be honest, this one here that I'm standing on, I didn't actually put the foam in there because, I almost got done digging out those pockets, and I really want to pull it back off and clean it up better, but I'm really dying to take this boat out today and see how it runs. So I'm just going to put the foam in the back here, button these rear compartments up, and then at a later date I can pull this front one and see what's left to be done on that. But the rear is nice and clean. That foam can stay in there. Didn't bother taking the labels off of the noodles or anything. I think they'll be just fine in there. But I think this is going to work well. All of the channels, that are lined up in there leaves plenty of airspace for water to flow towards the back of the boat. So when we're underway, if there is any water down in the bilge or that gets in, down the sidewalls here, it shouldn't get trapped in there anymore. So I'm liking it. It's looking good. Honestly, I still have a huge pool full of noodles over there. I don't know what the hell I was thinking when I purchased, but I got way more noodles than what I can deal with here. So they ended up being, so the yellow medium noodles in this forward compartment here, I ended up using 7.5 noodles up there. Back here, the large noodles, there's 2 per compartment. So 2, 4, 6, 8 larges. There are 4 blues. There are 1, 2. I think there are 12 medium noodles. So I should be able to get a final weight count whenever I tally everything up and do all the weights and everything here at the end. That should give me a good place to start. So anyway, I'm gonna throw throw the decking back down on it, and we're gonna take it out and see how she does. Well, here we go, guys. Here's all of what I took out of there, all the bags I weighed, all lined up, just to give you a better idea. Wow. Right? Laying here next to the Blazer that's gonna get that Cummins engine you hear running in the background. So we're getting ready to head out. I got everything buttoned back up and the seats shot back down to the floor and everything. So we're gonna go dip it in the water and see if we notice any difference. I suspect that we will. All right, guys, so the $100 question, I guess, is how did all of this turn out? What were our totals? In case you guys weren't adding things up as we went. I kept threatening that I was going to do it. I never did, and eventually I had to watch all the videos and just tally it up myself. Got my weights. I got my weights on how much foam went back in. And then that Sunday that I was really hustling hard to get this boat put back together, we did manage to get it out. It wasn't a great day for boating because it was overcast and it was kind of sprinkling on us a little bit. But took the boat out for a performance test after removing all of that. And I'll tell you what, it was shocking. I mean, if you know, again, I made reference to this this line, the scum line on the side of the boat here where it was sitting in the water. And honestly, you know, this is probably 7 inches here. You know, if you would say that that's where that boat was sitting before, after removing all that foam, this piece of trim down here where it transitions into that bottom, I mean, it's just barely underwater right there. And certainly on plane, you know, this entire portion gets up out of the water cleanly. So it rides a lot higher in the water. I was able to feel that the boat was lighter towing it with the truck. Maneuvering the boat turns faster, the boat backs up easier. In fact, I'm gonna have to readjust the my neutral setting on the diverter valve on the jet, because neutral is pushing the boat forward at a lot easier, and I need to adjust it to be a little lower so that the boat stays in one place as I'm backing up. It's a totally different boat. The boat has a hole shot. Now we were having some engine troubles, so if I try to roll in the throttle a little too fast, it will put the fire out in the cylinders, causing me to back the throttle off. So, but with as an aggressive of a throttle application as I could muster, that boat would give me a hole shot that I've never experienced before. Now my top speed was not exactly what I was expecting. I was expecting to you know, it's right now I'm somewhere in the mid 30 mile an hour top speed range, which is way off, I think, for this boat. But we're going to work on that. We're going to get there. I think if I can figure out some of my motor troubles that I'm having, that'll help a little bit. Obviously, getting the weight out of there is going to help. And then the main thing, I think, is getting those impellers all cleaned up and rebuilt, getting them the outside diameter of the impellers to the right size for that tube, and then cleaning all the chips and out of the leading and trailing edges and polishing up the faces. And I think this thing will be doing what it's supposed to and running mid 40 mile an hour depending on weight. I'd like to have a 50 plus mile an hour boat. But we're just going to see what happens. I'm gonna just go through everything that I know how to do and do it up and see where we land. So I guess first thing I want to do is I'll go through this numbers, and then I really want to talk a little bit about the foam noodles. I kind of just glossed right over that part of it and during the video. I did spend a little time researching foam. As far as pour-in foam, and I still decided to go the direction of the foam noodles. Anyway, let's go through the weights real quick, and then we'll talk foam. So the weigh-in. So here's all my bags. It ended up being, you know, 1 bag per major compartment. The 9th bag, which is a light bag, was just the shop vac and all the little crumbs that I chiseled out of the hull. So there it is, guys. I knew it was going to be an impressive number, and that doesn't disappoint me. 494.6 pounds. I mean, you could have wrung a wet rag out in the bag afterwards and had it at an even 500, but I did it by the book here, and I didn't round it anything up, and that's exactly how much weight pulled out. So I mean, just to give you an idea, you know, I think this engine that's in there, it's a small block Chevy 350 with Vortec heads. Sitting there the way it's dressed, I think they call it like a 575 pound engine. So I mean, holy crap, guys, like I had an extra engine worth of weight sitting in this boat that wasn't actually helping propel the boat forward. So no wonder that this thing was feeling so heavy and so sluggish, and frankly just wasn't a whole lot of fun to cruise around in. So now I got, at least as far as a hole shot and maneuverability, I got a lot more fun of a boat. So then I'm gonna flip it over here, and you can take a look. I'll just this is an old piece of mail here. So I ended up weighing up here at the top my noodle weights, the large, the medium, the star shape, and then the small. Tallied up the noodles that I used that went back into that boat, and so to replace all that foam that I took out that was wet, 7.95, so just shy of 8 pounds, guys. And now there's actually flotation foam in the boat, unlike what was there before, which was more like a insulation, best I can tell. I don't believe that there's anything about that foam that was in there before that was, it wasn't closed cell. I believe it was open cell foam from the beginning. I'm sure that it provided some sort of an insulation factor between the hull and the floor. So if you were cruising this boat around in the wintertime and in the cold water, you would be able to walk around on the floor and it wouldn't be too terribly cold. I'm sure it was providing a lot of sound dampening and preventing the hull from oil canning and that kind of thing while you're cruising around on the water. But it certainly didn't help you out with the water at all. So part of the reason for the pool noodles is kind of what I'm showing right here. When I stack those things up, even if I give them a pretty good smush, this foam is pretty rigid, and I did preload or stack these things a little proud of the compartments. So when the floorboard went on and I tighten those screws down, it gives it just a little bit of a squish and keeps everything nice and snug and tight in there. But you can see how many opportunities there are in here for water to drain from the front of the boat to the back of the boat. And I think even if it had to, just because this kind of forms a little bit of a gasket seal down on the bottom of the boat where it would be sitting. But I just don't think that I don't think that this is going to trap water the way that other foam did. And at the very minimum, all I would have to do is have that plug pulled and pull this thing up a hill if there was water sitting in the mid bilge, and that water would just choose any number of these paths through here between the noodles to run to the back of the boat and drain. Again, I priced out some of the pour-in foam. Best I could tell, the pour-in foam that you could buy, I think you can buy a 2-gallon kit, so it comes in 2 1-gallon jugs. Mix it at 1-to-1, and for every quart of foam, it'll produce, after it expands, it'll produce 1 cubic foot of foam, and that's $110. So, I believe if that's 8 quarts of foam for 2 gallons of liquid, that would be 8 cubic feet rather of foam, and I would probably need a couple of those kits to do the whole thing. Honestly, guys, I was not that excited about the prospect of mixing and pouring foam in the bottom of the boat again. Not that recently, after having spent the entire weekend chiseling wet foam out, especially knowing that some of that foam can be fussy. They want the temperature to be at 72 degrees. They say if it's lower than that, you don't get the proper expansion. If it's higher than that, in some cases you get kind of over expansion and some of those things. They don't want you to mix it in quantities larger than, I think, a 1/2 gallon or 2 quarts at a time. Otherwise you can have problems with it going exothermic prematurely and hardening in the container before you pour it. I'm sure once you pour it in, it's got great adhesive qualities, and it's supposed to be a closed cell foam. If you screw it up, it's that much harder to chisel back out of there. There's no guarantee that there's no guarantee of how long that is going to remain closed cell foam and be resistant to water. The fact of the matter is this boat still has a couple leaks in there. I do believe I know where they're at. It's either on the transom seal down here or on the intake grate below the boat, right? So water is being let in somewhere, one of the two or both of those places. I wasn't really excited about pouring that foam in. I didn't want to spend the money and all that on it. I opted to go with pool noodles because I don't want a boat that you have to keep dry, or that you're worried about the foam. I'm expecting that this foam is going to get wet, that the interior of the boat is going to get wet. I want to be able to hose the deck boards down every once in a while, or even use some detergent or Simple Green and a scrub brush on the floor, and then just hose it out and let it drain out of the bilge. You know, it's a whitewater boat. You know, if I was really running this boat how the boat was designed to be ran, I'd be you know, hitting wakes, and water would be coming over the nose of the boat and filling the hull up a little bit, and I'd be pumping it out with the bill. There's just too many reasons, you know, letting the boat sit outside as it is right now. If we had a surprise thunderstorm, even like we did while I was fixing all of this, you know, and you don't get to cover the boat up, there's just 1,000 reasons water can end up in the boat. You can try to keep it dry, you can try to prevent that from happening, but you're probably not going to be 100% successful. And with what I replaced in the bottom of the hull, I think it's going to, you know, it'll certainly qualify as flotation foam. The biggest thing I was concerned about, more so than the flotation, is probably the sound dampening capabilities of it. You know, tightening it up, it's going to keep the rattling and the floorboards from rattling, and just keep everything nice and quiet. It definitely does that. But it's lightweight. I mean, 10 pounds of this went back in, and if it ever gets waterlogged, if it only lasts a year and I got to rip it out and replace it, it's just a few dollars, guys, that I spent on those noodles, and they're laying loose in the bilge. I can pull those floorboards up, and probably in a half hour's time, I could have every bit of foam that I currently have in the boat replaced with new foam. So that was my reasoning for going with noodles. I'm sure there's others that have plenty of good reasons to use the pour-in foam and to not use the noodles. You know, I didn't go that route. You know, I doubt that this is something that I can regret, because honestly, with the decision that I made to go with the noodles, if it turns out to be a mistake, it's a very easy mistake to fix. Just to take these out, throw them in the garbage, and then go ahead and pour in some of the expanding foam, you know, at a later date. And I have no plans right now to do that. I'll wait and see how this works out. So anyway, guys, overall, this was probably the most productive weekend for as far as getting some additional performance and getting this boat running the way that it should. This has been the most productive weekend I think that I've had so far. Unfortunately, I didn't get any of the video of from out on the lake, but that's okay, right? So I'd love to get a performance video when this boat is actually performing the way that I would expect that it should. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching the latest and greatest project. And there's an endless supply of projects around here for this boat. I have a few in mind that should be coming up here very soon, or even next. I'm still going to do all the machine work here to get the boat impellers welded up and turned back down and refitted into that tube. And also, while I was in the course of replacing that foam, I noticed how heavy the deck boards, the floorboards are, because they're a little damp. And I was taking a look at some options for replacing the flooring, the vinyl on there that's a little chewed up, and then the plywood underneath it. So yeah, guys, stick around. We'll have some more projects that hopefully you'll find interesting.